Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I am going to discuss another important topic of nutrition. I am Dr. Muhammad Salim Iqbal, Assistant Professor of Surgery, Deputy Controller Examination, Faisalabad Medical University, Faisalabad, certified in medical teaching. But before I start discussion about nutrition, I request you to please subscribe my channel and click on the bell icon to follow my more informative videos. How we assess nutritional status of a person. I will divide into its three stages: first stage assessment, second stage assessment, and third stage assessment. In first stage assessment, we assess nutritional intake of a person. We compare intake with estimated daily requirements. We check clinical signs that are skin texture, hair, eyes, bony prominences. We do anthropometric measure, height, weight, circumference, and skin fold thickness. Second stage assessment. In second stage assessment, we do biochemistry and hematology, blood and or urine test for protein status, vitamin, mineral and trace element status. Third stage or research protocols, we check body composition, distribution of fat, water and minerals. We perform functional test. We check neurological evaluation of the patient, and we perform developmental test. Clinical assessment of a person or patient. Number 1, weight. Fluctuation in body weight in the long term may reflect nutritional changes, and in the critically ill patient, acute weight change is caused by changes in fluid balance. Second is height, then body mass index, which is weight in kg divided by height in meter square. Normal range of BMI is between 18.5 to 24.9. BMI values below 18.5 represent malnutrition. Patient with BMI in excess of 25 to 29.9 are overweight, and those who have values of 30 are described as obese. Then clinically we assess muscle wasting, bony prominences, hair distribution. The measurement of height will determine growth velocity in the child, and it is a sensitive marker of nutrition and disease. Lab investigations include serum albumin level, serum pre-albumin level, transferrin level, creatinine height index. Creatinine height index is actual 24-hour urinary creatinine excretion divided by predicted excretion. If it is more than 80, no or malnutrition. If it is 60 to 80, it is moderate malnutrition, and if it is less than 60, it is severe malnutrition. Next is anthropometric measure, that is skin fold thicknesses. Skin fold thickness are performed on right side of body, and these are measured with caliper and by pinching skin. Tricep fold thickness in posterior midline and vertical. In male it is 12.5 mm and in female 16.5 mm. Subscapular 1 to 2 cm below inferior scapular angle. Abdomen vertical fold 2 cm right to umbilicus. Thigh vertical fold and midline of thigh. Then mid-arm circumference in male is 29.3 centimeter, and in female 28.5 centimeter. Next is advanced body composition analysis, dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, DEXA for percentage of body fat, hydrostatic weighting, that is weighting under water, hydrodensitometer, differentiate between body weight in air and underwater, then plethysmography, then electrical impedance analysis. Functional measurement of nutrition status, fist grip dynamometry FGD, a handheld dynamometer is used for this purpose. Both dominant and non-dominant hands are checked and compared. What are indications for nutritional support? It is indicated whenever there is pre-operative nutritional depletion, post-operative complications like sepsis, ileus, fistula, intestinal fistula, usually in high output fistulas, pancreatitis, malabsorption, ulcerative colitis, pyloric stenosis, anorexia nervosa, and intractable vomiting, trauma leading to multiple fractures, facial-maxillary injuries, head and neck injuries, burns, malignant disease, renal and liver failure, massive bowel resection causing short bowel syndrome. Enteral nutrition. The preferred route to provide nutrition is enteral one. This can be performed by standard oral intake or by administration directly into the stomach or small intestine via a feeding tube. The provision of enteral nutrition maintains gut mucosal integrity and reduces complications. There is compelling evidence that the gut is important in critically ill patients, and if it is unused for even a brief period, the mucosa begins to atrophy and lose its barrier function. This atrophy and loss of barrier function allows bacteria and toxins contained in the bowel to enter into the bloodstream. This is called as bacterial translocation, which ultimately leads to systemic inflammatory response syndrome, sepsis, and multi-organ dysfunction syndrome. Now briefly about types of feeding formula. Feeding formula can be polymeric, that is near normal composition. These contain intact proteins, starches, and long chain fatty acids. They are useful in patients who have a functioning stomach and normal digestive capacity. Then disease specific formulas. These are feeds which are tailored to meet the requirements of specific diseases. For example, feeds for liver disease patients, hepatic failure formulas, enteral renal formulas. Then elemental formulas. These are chemically defined fields that contain simple amino acids, oligosaccharides, and monosaccharides. These require minimal digestion and are useful in patients with intestinal fistula but are far from palatable. Lastly, immunomodulating formulas. These formula provide glutamine and typically omega fatty acids in an attempt to enhance immunological function. Route of administration. Enteral nutrition formulas can be delivered by tubes placed into gastrointestinal tract directly, that is gastrostomy, feeding jejunostomy, or via nose, that is nasogastric, nasoduodenal, or nasojejunal route. Post pyloric placement. Jejunostomy, nasoduodenal, nasojejunal of feeding tubes are associated with decreased risk of aspiration and earlier tolerance, but are more difficult to place, leading to potential delays in initiation of enteral nutrition. Rate of administration: a reasonable starting point is full strength at 20 ml per hour and increased by 20 ml per hour every 6 to 12 hours until goal rate is obtained or excessive residuals are noted. The goal rate is determined by patient's caloric needs and the caloric density of the formula. Gastric residual volumes of tube feedings should be checked every 4 hours to determine if excessive residual volumes are present. Even if the feedings are post-pyloric, the volume of residual that is excessive is a controversial thing, but typically it is considered greater than 200 ml or 4 times the rate. If residual volumes are high, the infusion should be stopped and then resumed after 4 hours. Options for enteral feeding: these are nasogastric tube, nasoduodenal or nasojejunal tube, percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy, surgical gastrostomy, fluoroscopic gastrostomy, PEG jejunal tube, direct percutaneous endoscopic jejunostomy, surgical jejunostomy, and fluoroscopic jejunostomy. Now briefly about options for enteral feeding assess. Nasogastric tube, it is suitable for short term functional GIT tract. It is easy to insert, replace, can monitor gastric pH and residual volume, and for bolus, and can be used for bolus feeding. Its disadvantages are aspiration, misplacement, sinusitis, epistaxis, nasal necrosis, esophageal strictures, and erosive esophagitis. Next, nasoduodenal and nasojejunal. This is for short-term functional GIT tract, but with poor gastric emptying, reflux, aspiration, and its advantage is that it reduces the aspiration risks, and its disadvantages: it can be easily clogged or displaced, it has aspiration risks, it can be misplaced, and it can cause epistaxis, nasal necrosis, and it requires continuous infusion. We cannot check gastric residual through it. Next is the gastrostomy. It is suitable for long term good gastric emptying, avoid significant reflux or aspiration problem. Its advantage is that bolus feeding can be given through large bore tubes. It has a disadvantage during procedure, which include bleeding, perforation, aspiration risk, peritoneal contamination, and later on it can cause wound infection and infection granuloma. Jejunostomy, it is suitable for long term functional GIT tract but with poor gastric emptying. It has advantage of reduced risk of aspiration. Its disadvantage or complications are: it can cause bleeding, infection, perforation, aspiration, leakage into peritoneal cavity, then bowel obstruction, and sometimes it is very difficult to replace it, and it requires continuous infusion. Is there any monitoring for enteral feeding? Yes, of course. We have to measure different parameters like electrolytes, complete blood counts, glucose level, creatinine levels, input output record, body weight, urine output, and stool output. If the patient is acute, that is unstable or critically ill patient, we have to repeat these parameters daily. We have to monitor urine output every hour, and we have to check glucose level 3 or even more times per day. But if the patient is stable, then we can have these investigation 2 to 3 times or 1 to 2 times per week depending on their indications. And we have to measure urine output of a stable patient every 4 hours, and we have to check glucose level depending on the blood glucose level. Briefly about complications of enteral nutrition and their management. If the patient develops diarrhea, we have to measure stool output of the patient, we have to rule out infection, we have to supply fiber diet to the patient, we may have to change formula of the patient, then we have to administer anti-motility medications. If the patient has repeated complaints of nausea and vomiting, then we have to give isotonic formulation, we have to use closed system of feeding, we have to reduce the dose of narcotics if patient is taking, then we may use gastroparetic agents, we have to monitor gastral residuals and stool output. If there is complication of constipation or fecal impaction, we have to monitor fluid balance of patient, we have to add stool softeners, laxative and enemas. If patient has developed aspiration pneumonia, then place head of patient 45 degrees, stop feeding if there is lot of gastroresidual volume, and use other options. Hyponatremia, overhydration, in these conditions we have to monitor fluid balance, body weight daily, then we have to restrict fluids, we have to change formula of the patient and initiate diuretic therapy. If patient has hypernatremia, then we have to increase free water. If patient has developed dehydration, then we have to increase fluid intake of patient. Hyperglycemia, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia and hyperkalemia should be managed accordingly. Gastrostomy, it is done if feeding is required for more than 1 month. It can be temporary type, serosal line, or it may be permanent type, that is mucosal line. Indications of gastrostomy are severe malnutrition, major surgeries, severe sepsis, trauma, head and neck surgeries. Post-operative care of gastrostomy, usually tube is clamped off as soon as normal bowel function returns. Temporary gastrostomy should not be removed for at least 7 to 10 days to ensure adequate peritoneal sealing. In addition, it should not be removed until alimentary function has returned to normal. When a permanent gastrostomy is done because of esophageal obstruction, liquids such as water and milk may be injected safely into catheter within 24 hours while intravenous hyperalimentation continue. Liquids of high calorie and high vitamin values are added gradually. After a week or more, catheter may be removed and cleaned, but it should be replaced immediately because of tendency towards overly rapid closure of sinus tract in Janeway type of gastrostomy. Complications of gastrostomies are gastric fistulas, infection, aspiration and pneumonia, diarrhea, bloating and abdominal cramps, displacement or blockage of tube. Contraindications of gastrostomy are previous gastric surgeries, intestinal obstruction and gastric outlet obstruction. Jejunostomy for enteral nutrition is becoming more popular because of its comfort, easy to do, can be kept for a long period of time, and it has lesser complication than gastrostomy. Indications are same as gastrostomy. Its types are Witzel jejunostomy. Site of placing jejunostomy tube is 30 cm from duodenojejunal junction. Percutaneous endoscopic jejunostomy. Laparoscopic needle jejunostomy using catheter of small gauge. Feeding protocol through jejunostomy. Feed can be administered by using various methods. Bolus method, in which we administer feed solution over 15 to 20 minutes period via syringe several times a day, frequently in 150 to 200 ml each session. Intermittent gravity drip administers a set volume over 30 to 60 minutes several times a day, often by a given set only. And continuous feeding protocol administer full feed solution over a period of 8 to 24 hours, often using an enteral feeding pump set to a prescribed rate. Parenteral intravenous nutrition. Parenteral nutrition can be total parenteral nutrition or partial parenteral nutrition. Total parenteral nutrition allows the provision of adequate nutrition through intravenous access without using GIT tract. But in partial parenteral nutrition, we use GIT tract partially. When possible, nutrition should be given enterally, and combined enteral and parenteral administration is sometimes beneficial. What are the routes of administration? The usual route of administration of TPN is via percutaneous placed venous line with tip located in superior vena cava. High osmolality of TPN causes phlebitis and sclerosis if it is infused into peripheral veins. Because partial parenteral nutrition is less hyperosmolar and therefore does not cause phlebitis, so it can be delivered through peripheral veins. What should be the rate of administration? Frequently, patients are started at half the goal rate for 12 hours before advancing to full rate to avoid severe hyperglycemia. Initiation of therapy. TPN infusion is usually initiated at rate of 25 to 50 ml per hour. Rate is then increased until final rate is achieved. Now administration. To ensure that solution is administered at a continuous rate, an infusion pump is utilized to administer the solution. In ambulatory home patient, administration usually occur overnight, but in hospitalized patient, it usually occur 22 to 24 hours per day. What are classical indications of parenteral nutrition? These are failure or contraindication for any enteral nutrition for 7 to 10 days, high output abdominal fistulas, duodenal, biliary, pancreatic fistulas, major abdominal surgeries of liver, pancreas, biliary and colonic area, septicemia, major trauma, short bowel syndrome, head injury and severe burn. What should be kept in mind while writing parenteral nutrition prescriptions? We should determine total volume of formulation based on individual patient fluid needs. We should determine amino acid or protein contents adequate to meet patient estimated needs. Carbohydrate content should be approximately 70 to 80% of non-protein calories. Lipid contents approximately 20 to 30% of non-protein calories. Then we should determine electrolyte needs, determine acid base status, checks to make sure desired formulation will fit in the total volume that is indicated. What are types of TPN? TPN solutions with lipid, also called 3-in-1, and solution without lipids called 2-in-1. How monitoring of patient is carried out while he or she is on total parenteral nutrition? Monitoring is carried out on daily basis. We have to measure body weight, fluid balance, blood count, urea electrolytes, blood glucose of urine, intestinal volumes and temperature. Then weekly we have to measure urine and plasma osmolalities, calcium level, manganese level, zinc level, phosphate level, plasma protein levels including albumin, complete liver function test including clotting factors, serum thiamine level, acid base status, and serum triglyceride level. Fortnightly, we have to measure serum vitamin B12, folate, iron, lactate, and trace elements measurement. Complications of parenteral nutrition. These complications may be related to nutrient deficiency, that may be hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, hypophosphatemia, hypomagnesemia, chronic deficiency syndromes, essential fatty acids, zinc, mineral, and trace element deficiencies. Complications may be related to overfeeding. For example, excess of glucose leading to hyperglycemia, hyperosmolar dehydration, hepatic steatosis, hypercapnia, increased sympathetic activity, fluid retention, and even electrolyte abnormality. Excessive fats leading to hypercholesterolemia and formation of lipoproteins, hypertriglyceridemias, hypersensitivity reactions. Excessive amino acids leading to hypercholoremic metabolic acidosis, uremia, aminoacidemia. Other complication related to sepsis, these are catheter related sepsis. Then complications related to lines. At the time of insertion, there may be pneumothorax, damage to adjacent artery, air embolism, thoracic duct damage, cardiac perforation or tamponade, pleural effusion, and on long term use it can be occluded due to some clot, or it can cause venous thrombosis. What will happen to a patient who is chronically starved and severe anorexic, and someone has started total parenteral nutrition and without proper monitoring? This patient is at highly increased risk of refeeding syndrome. Now, what is refeeding syndrome? Refeeding syndrome is occurrence of severe fluid and electrolyte imbalance in severely malnourished individual while starting the proper feeding enteral or parenteral nutrition. But this condition is more common with total parenteral nutrition. What happens? It causes hypomagnesemia, hypocalcemia, hypophosphatemia, leading to myocardial dysfunction, respiratory changes, altered liver functions, altered level of consciousness, convulsions, and often death. Gradual feeding and correction of magnesium, phosphate, calcium, and other electrolyte is important. In today's lecture, I tried my level best to give brief description of nutrition. I have prepared my slides through book Surgical Tutor, and I dedicate this effort to my teacher, Professor Dr. Zafar Ali Chaudhry, who is a source of motivation and encouragement for me. At last, I pray from Almighty Allah for your good health. Take care, stay blessed. Allah Hafiz.